Okay. Thank you for having me. Over the past decade, I've been hyper-fixated on ring composition, and I'm excited to share everything that I've learned. In my humble opinion, there are two reasons why every writer should know ring composition. Not only will it help with your internal creative process, but it's going to help your audience remember your story better than a 3-act structure you're currently learning. So let's start with what you know about the 3-act structure.
Beginning, middle, and end. Climax in the middle. Oh, there you go.
Beginning, middle, and end. It's basically all that's taught. People will go into more details about what the beginning, the middle, and end should be, but that is the very basic of every story structure, and of course it is what should be taught first. No matter the story, you obviously have to begin somewhere, and you do have to find an ending somewhere. But the middle is always it's a no man's land. Every teacher I've had has taught how to navigate the middle differently. This is also the most linear way of teaching story structure, and it's also the most distilled way. But it shouldn't be thought of as the be-all, end-all. It should be thought of like this is the first thing you learn when you learn any story structure. So in linear composition, every part is like a domino where it's all falling forward. Probably shouldn't put my hand in front of the projector. We have Act 1, where audiences find out the circumstances of the story, so the characters, the settings, the world we need to believe in. Then in the second act, something comes up that puts all of that in jeopardy. Finally, in Act 3, our characters, with their unique skill sets and quirks, handle the conflict and come to a resolution. Sometimes it's a happily ever after solution, and sometimes not so much. Beyond these 3 key points, there's usually one other tidbit that we're taught, and it's the one thing that never quite clicked with me, which is the beginning and the end should mirror each other. But why? Why would you spend all this time changing your character just to put them back at the beginning? Any ideas?
I guess because you want the audience to feel that there's been closure on the story, or because you want them to return to the positive state that they were in before conflict?
Yeah. So we have, in my opinion, there are 2 answers. The first one that I think is taught the most is to emphasize the change. If you see a bright young boy leaving his home to go off to war, and then at the end he goes home broken and world-weary, that will highlight the dramatic change that he went through, sort of summarizing his character arc. But there's something else that I didn't realize until I stumbled upon ring composition. When you show similar images, you activate the audience's memory. When we see something once, we're not likely to remember it, but when we see it twice, we dramatically increase our ability to remember it. For example, when we learn a new language, we have to learn the same words over and over and over before we can start using them instinctively.
This is like Frodo returning
to the Shire.
To the Shire.
Yeah. So this is why we love callbacks in storytelling. A good callback can make us remember entire movies. For instance, if I say the words "on your left," do you remember all of the Marvel Cinematic Universe?
I definitely do.
Yeah.
Yes, absolutely. That's weird.
And you might be of the age of, if I say "as you wish,"
yes,
Princess Bride.
Definitely.
For younger fans, the example I have is Harry Potter, I must not tell lies. This is also when I would ask the audience if they can think of any other callbacks that they like.
I love Yippee-ki-yay, motherfucker.
That is a fantastic callback.
Makes me think of Christmas and love.
Yes. So it has been scientifically proven that callbacks increase retention. Have you noticed when you binge a TV show, you don't remember it as well as a show that you watched once a week? Or you remember an episode of TV better when it is broken up by commercials? That is because repetitive information that is spaced out activates our long-term memory. Another thing that activates our ability to create memories is strong emotions. When you think of On Your Left, you probably swell with the same emotion you had seeing all those superheroes come together to defeat Thanos. Or you remember hating Professor Umbridge and being happy the centaurs abducted her when Harry Potter says, "I must not tell lies." When we put these things together on our own, we feel clever. So when we see one image and then another slightly different image, we get to feel smart about noticing the difference. So this is those are 3 reasons that callbacks are really effective in storytelling. So I want you to think of ring composition as the muscle on top of bones. The bones being the 3 acts that you're normally taught, the beginning, the middle, and the end. That is absolutely where you need to start learning, but once you have that down, we can start layering the idea of ring composition into your ability to tell stories. One thing that I would like to say now is this will not teach you how to be a good storyteller, in the sense that being a good storyteller is highly subjective. When the type of mood the audience is in when they watch something or read something, if you are a screenwriter especially, the amount of other hands that will get onto your story before it's released to the public, how it's marketed, all of that is going to affect whether or not the story is good. Also, if it's just coming out, because how many times have we seen a movie that was oh, that was ahead of its time? So I can't tell you how to make a good story, but hopefully ring composition will teach you how to make a memorable story. So this is ring composition. The basic idea is that the second half is a mirror or reverse of the first half. So when we talk about the 3-act structure, we're talking in numbers, Act 1, Act 2, Act 3. When we talk about ring composition, we talk in letters. So A, B, C, B, C, A. Or C, B, A, sorry. We have the beginning A, the middle is C, and then we swing back to an A counterpart. But the reason that we talk in this language is to show that everything is interwoven. So ring composition can move any way you want it to, but every part has to have a counterpart. Stories that only begin and end at the same place aren't rings. The whole story itself has to work together. Since we're not limited to a number of acts, the chiastic structure is stretchable. It can be a sentence or a 6-book series. It's whatever you want it to be, but there does need to be clear divisions between each part so that the audience has a way to clue into the fact that we are moving on. This can be anything from a chapter break, a commercial break, a new TV episode, or a new feature film in a franchise. And then thirdly, the midpoint must be definitive. The audience should be able to tell immediately that the story is about to head back from whence it came, and as we'll talk about later, the midpoint is the overall question, theme, message of your story. One way to think about this is that it is structural poetry. In poems, there's normally a rhyming element. These similar sounding words help activate the brain and, if done well, feel pleasant to the listener. That general effect is what we're aiming for when we employ ring composition. So, to get into some examples, a lot of famous quotes follow the principles of ring composition. Also, ring composition can be referred to as chiasmus, or the chiastic structure.
Why?
Chiasmic is the Greek word for coming back around. And so a lot of these examples that I'm going to show you, it's one of those things of kind of like a chicken and the egg thing of are these quotes memorable because they follow the ring theory? or is it, I think I'm going to take that out of my lecture, but they have been easy to remember.
Yeah.
So
Right.
ask not what your country can do for you, ask what you can do for your country, plan to fail, fail to plan, which is very much in line with what the chiastic structure will be. I'd rather die on my feet than live on my knees. This one is a little more subtle. The dying and living, feet and knees, are opposing imageries. Do you have, and that's one small step for man, one giant leap for mankind.
Mm-hmm.
This is also where I'd like to ask the audience, do you have any other examples that come to mind? I don't necessarily think people will.
Ones, but what strikes me about those is the rhythm
Yeah,
that you say them and the cadence.
yeah,
And sort of like if your story has that kind of cadence, it will be stuck in your head.
yeah. So let's get on to some complex examples. So unlike sentence long examples, these are very overarching, expansive examples, usually spread over multiple entries. A lot of these examples that we have of the ring theory are from ancient texts like the Iliad or the Odyssey or Beowulf. It is theorized that oral traditions where these stories come from utilize ring compositions as a way to help the performer remember their place in the poem, because no one would perform the entire poem in one sitting. That would have been like multi-day performance. So they would go and they would do like a chunk, like here's this little story of Penelope, and then here's a story of Odysseus and the Cyclops. So it was broken up into parts like that. And it was a way for the performer, because nobody was really writing anything down, so it was a way for them to remember, like, oh, what did I do yesterday? I know where I need to go if I know where I've been, because everything is interwoven. And the beauty of using a structure like that weaves itself together is that if it was easy for the performer to remember, it was also easy for the audience to remember, which is why these stories were handed down generation after generation until eventually somebody did write them down. But there's one more example that we're probably likely to remember better than anything, and that is the Bible. The entire Bible is not one big ring as Beowulf is, but and it's not one big ring because it was written over centuries and different people came in and did different interpretations of the stories. But there are many individual stories within the Bible, and the one that I think is the most famous, and therefore the one that I want to put in my lecture, is the story of Adam and Eve and the serpent and the apple. So just to go over this, every line that I have here correlates to a very specific line in the Bible. Like when you reference biblical sources, it is this proverb and this line. But I've adapted it to modern language just to help everybody stay on the same page. So the basic story is the serpent goes to Eve, says, hey, you should eat that apple, then you'll be like God. Eve eats the apple, she just inherently understands a whole bunch more stuff. She gives it to Adam, he eats the apple. God arrives and can immediately tell something is different with his humans because they have decided to hide from him. He goes on to question them, he realizes that they have disobeyed his one edict, and therefore he has to punish them and curse them out of the lovely garden. Before we get into, how do I want to say this? One of the things that I want to warn you when you think about ring composition is that you can find it really intimidating, this idea that every part has to have a counterpart. And so now is the moment that I want to say, it is not that deep. Yes, every part has to have a counterpart, but these counterparts can be anything. It can be the same location, the same or reverse line of dialogue, the same or reversed order of something happening. Don't overthink it. And to go back to the Adam and Eve story, this is all it is. You know, they make clothes out of fig leaves. Before they leave, God makes them close.
Mm-hmm.
They hide from the garden, they are cast out from the garden.
Mm-hmm.
The center bit is just God going to questioning them and then cursing them in the reverse order. So it isn't, not every part counterpart has to be a very dramatic or plot involved counterpart. They just have to relate to each other in the grand scheme of things. So we're about halfway through the lecture.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to start moving into the reasons that I mentioned in the beginning of how this is going to increase internal processes. But I just want to take a moment and go, do you understand what I'm talking about? Do you have any questions about overall ring composition?
Would the saying, give a man a fish, he eats for a day, teach a man to fish, he eats for a lifetime?
Yeah.
Is that a kind of ring composition type thing?
That would absolutely fall within the chiasmus.
Because I think a lot of the pronouncements, or I don't know what you would call them, from historical texts like the Bible would fit into that kind of idea. Because not just because it's going in a circle, but because it teaches you something about, it sticks in your mind because it's trying to teach you how to live and how to be.
Yeah.
So there's a value behind it.
Yes,
Okay.
absolutely.
Yeah, it's really interesting.
Okay, so here are the 4 reasons that I personally love ring composition. Obviously, we've talked a lot about memorability, but these first 2, memorability and dissectability, they are outward-facing reasons. So memorability is why it will help your audience remember your story. Dissectability, we will go into about how it will help critics talk about your story. Navigability and adaptability are internal creative processes. So now that we've already covered the first one, let us move into dissectability. This is not a real word. I will.
But I know what it means.
Yeah.
So.
I had a theme going. I just wanted to keep with it. But the thing is, critics need something to talk about. It is how they make their money. They want to be able to take really deep dives into something. If they have a movie that is sort of basic, doesn't say anything new, they're not going to, oh, I shouldn't have gone forward so fast. They're not going to have much to say, so they're probably not even going to talk about it in favor of a movie that gives them much more to talk about. And in our beautiful age of technology, we have more critics than ever. We still have the traditional media, the critics of the New York Times, but now we have bloggers and YouTubers and TikTokers, and all of those critics are doing it in different formats. So, a reviewer in the New York Times maybe is like a 500 word, a YouTuber can spend hours breaking down a movie. So they want things to talk about, and they want to be able to do it, either really in depth or very quickly. This is why ring composition comes in handy. Unlike a 3-act story, there's no deep dive about when Act 2 starts and when Act 3 starts. Those are just internal terms for writers. Critics and audiences don't really care. But ring composition, what you choose as the middle defines your entire story. Everything that leads up to your story can be matched with something, everything that leads up to the middle of a story can be matched with something afterwards. And because we're not overthinking it and we're letting those parts counterparts be subtle, that leaves a lot of room for interpretation. So critics can talk about what they think, how you've broken it down in parts and counterparts, and then another critic can disagree or agree, starting a dialogue among critics about your story. this creates a positive spiral for you. The more critics that are talking about your story, the more general people will want to watch your story. The more general people who are watching your story, the more critics will want to talk about it to get into that trending section on social media. Do you have any questions about the dissectability?
No.
Great. Then let's move into navigability. Every story has to start with a hook, something that grabs the audience so that they will want to watch the rest of it. Everything has to have a satisfying ending so they don't feel like they just wasted their time. There have obviously been a lot of shows that have had bad endings, and it has sort of turned everyone's opinion of the overall show. Game of Thrones. Absolutely. And you will get a lot of notes, and writers will do a lot of reworking of the beginning and the end to make sure that they are hitting those moments. So much so that the middle is really not taught, to the point where people complain about it being the dreaded middle. It's just a no man's land. Some writers will even break the middle into two parts of Act 2A and Act 2B, all revolving around a simple midpoint, which is getting us dangerously close to the same principles of ring composition. The middle is the whole point. It is as vital as the beginning and the end. It is not just about coming up with a great hook and a good ending. It is the entire journey that is important in the ring composition. The middle bit is where the message or theme of your story can shine through. If you're writing a love story, the middle is where that love gets tested. If you are writing a horror story, the middle is where things get truly scary. If you are writing a mystery, the middle is where everything is a question and there are no answers to be found. In Adam and Eve, the story where they eat the apple, the middle part is when God has realized that they have disobeyed him. It is the moral of that story. You are supposed to leave the church after hearing that story going, I better not let anyone trick me into disobeying God, because then I will get cast out. Because God takes a couple minutes to talk to Adam and Eve and make sure that they didn't accidentally eat the apple. If they had, maybe he just would have wiped their memories and started all over again. But the fact that they on purpose disobeyed him is the moral of that story. So whatever happens in the middle of your story should hit your main theme on the head, which means that you do need to know what you're talking about. I think a lot of action writers, there are a lot of movies that are just like one gun battle to the next. And those are movies that we don't remember because there was no meaning. It was just one action.
Installments of The Hobbit.
Yeah.
Like Lord of the Rings, awesome. The Hobbit, not good.
Yeah. So, having said that, there are actually multiple ways to put a middle into a ring composition. So the example that I've given of Adam and Eve eating the apple, the moment is God realizing that they've disobeyed him. It is an internal moment, so it happens really fast, and it doesn't have its unique moment because it is happening instantaneously. Or you can have a unique moment, which means that it wouldn't have a parallel, and it is the only part of the story that doesn't have a counterpart. So for example, if you're thinking about a married couple who is expecting their first child, everything up to the middle point is them trying to figure out how to be good parents. So they're reading all of the books, they're baby-proofing their home, they're putting a savings together so that they can take time off. And then the midpoint is the birth of the child. The rest of the story is them realizing none of those books knew what they were talking about. There's actually no way to childproof a home. Your savings runs out way too fast. But the birth of the child does not have a counterpart. And then the last one is putting a ring within a ring. So let's say we have a story about two lovers. The first half of the story is about them falling in love. And then there's a moment where one of them starts to think that the other is cheating. So then the middle becomes its own ring where the person who is getting cheated on starts, trying to gather evidence, and then they confront their lover with the evidence, and maybe they get some sort of explanation about what's going on. And then we snap back into the bigger ring where they're falling out of love and the consequences that relationship and that cheating had on both of them. So ring composition can be as simple or as complicated as you want it, which brings us to our final part, adaptability. Just like with the basic 3-act structure, ring composition can be applied to any and all stories. So you can write one book that is a ring composition, or you can write an entire series. You can write one film, or you can write a trilogy of films. You can write a TV show where each season is a ring, or the entire series of seasons is its own ring. And the truth is that in a healthy career nowadays, you have to do multiple things. It's pretty rare that you're going to be able to do only one of these things. The best chance you have is probably being a novelist, but even if you're a novelist, if your books become successful, at some point someone is going to want to adapt them. And it's honestly, in my experience, it is better if you have a hand in adapting your own stories. And so currently, the way that all of these different formats are done are a bit different. So in half-hour and hour-long TVs, you have an odd number of acts and then a teaser. The quick way to think about it is like in comedies, the teaser is the cold open, and then there's what's ever actually happening. In hour-long dramas, I think the best example is like crime shows where the teaser is you seeing who's getting murdered or robbed or whatever, and then it's 5 acts of them figuring out who did it. Obviously, features are in 3 acts. Short form, which is the newest medium that is coming up, hasn't really quite established what its format is, besides the fact that it's usually 1 minute to 10 minutes long. But it will be easy to put these into chiastic formats. So instead of having teasers that are sort of separated from the rest of your story, you just create an even amount of parts. Features can be, like I said, it can either be one film, or like one film is a ring, or a series of films is a ring. In short form, because you can have hundreds of episodes in short form, so like every 1 minute to 10 minute episode can be a ring. You can do like this 10 episode chunk is a ring, and then this 10 episode chunk is a ring, and they aren't rings within each other. But you can also just get very, very complicated and have like 10 section rings that make up one big ring. Like you can go crazy if you want to. So I'd like to get into some examples. So, How to Train Your Dragon. There are 3 movies. Every movie is its own ring. And I'm going to give you an episode in the next slide, give you a website in the next slide, so you can go and do like an in-depth dive of that if you want. Star Wars, this is where I actually first found out about ring composition. There is an essay up on the internet that explains how the first 6 episodes, so episodes 4, 5, and 6, are a ring, or half of the ring of episodes 1, 2, and 3. And to me, that gave me a much greater appreciation for episodes 1, 2, and 3, because on their own, I didn't really like them. But once you put them together into this overarching ring, you're like, oh, I get what he was going for a lot better. The Mitchells versus Machines is not actually a ring. However, they have 4 different callbacks that are interwoven throughout the whole film. And I think that it's just a really interesting watch to see how close we as storytellers are naturally coming to ring composition structure instinctually. And then the Night Manager in the first season, they're a great example of just using the locations. So they have basically 3 main locations that they go to, and they start and end in the same. In the episode 2 and 4 are in the same, and then episode 3 and 4 are the same. So it's a great way of not overthinking it too much, just letting the main characters go in really deep and then get back out of the mystery and the corruption that is, I've forgotten the antagonist's name, which I should put in my notes. Luther?
Hugh Laurie.
Oh yeah, Hugh Laurie. I was thinking about, I forgot his character's name. Luther is also very interesting. It is not a perfect ring, but the 5 seasons, because there's a movie that's attached at the end. Don't watch the movie, that's not what I'm talking about. But the whole story of Luther is sort of, can someone change? And how can you be surrounded by bad people all the time and remain a good person? And it's very interesting because we meet Luther when he's very clearly becoming too bad for his own good, he's letting the criminals rub off on him. I'm about to spoil it, but it starts with him letting a criminal die from falling from a great height. And then it ends from, even though he doesn't get there in time, he tries his hardest to stop a criminal from falling to their death. And so, yeah, so it's hard to give you a good watch list because this is not something that Hollywood is currently doing, but it is so interesting that so many stories are getting so close to ring composition, and then you just think about how long the structure has been around, and the fact that I think that this is a very natural, instinctive structure for us to be telling stories in.
It comes naturally in a way.
Yeah. There's something about ring composition that is intrinsically human, and that's why I love it.
Redemption.
Yeah. If reading is more your speed, Aristotle's Poetics, the thing about Aristotle's Poetics is that he is talking about the things that were contemporary to him, like the Iliad and the Odyssey. And so you can read, because a lot of people will teach the 3-act structure with Aristotle's Poetics, but now that you know ring composition, it is a really cool thing to read back and see all of the little things that make you go, oh, he was actually talking about ring composition. He wasn't talking about our very modern idea of 3-act stories. Mary Douglas's Thinking in Circles breaks down a number of stories in way more depth than I can go in through one lecture. So that's probably the thing that I would recommend the most. If you really want to get a handle on how exactly to write in this structure. And then Mike Klumo's Star Wars Ring Theory is the essay I mentioned in the last slide that will help explain the first 6 chapters of Star Wars. And then there is a blogger called the Deja Reviewer who has done an entire series, so the Dark Knight trilogy, the How to Train Your Dragons movies. I'm actually tempted to pull it up, but he just has so many movies that he's broken down to be these are either perfect or almost perfect rings. So you can get, you could make your own personal curriculum just by looking at his website. And then I think that if you look at these 4 things plus the 5 watch list examples, you will have a really good understanding of ring composition and will be able to start writing it for yourself. And so I just want to say thank you and let the fun begin. Though this is how crazy ring cycle could be if you want to go for it.
You can keep going for it.
I know that I've said this multiple times, but it bears repeating. Don't overthink it. You will freak yourself out and you won't let yourself write in this at all. Counterparts can be anything that just come naturally. Costumes is also a really great way to think about it. So it doesn't, so it doesn't even have to be anything that you're like writing in the dialogue or in the plot. It can just be something that gets layered on like muscles onto your bones. So thank you again, and any other questions or comments or concerns?
Well, I have plenty, but
Yeah.
do you want it on film?
Yeah.
So, one thing I think is really interesting is that you could think of ring theory as the coming home again thing.
Yeah.
Because a lot of the stories involve someone going away from something that's comfortable and then coming back to it with a whole different perspective.
Yes.
And the one example that I thought of that seems like the perfect ring is Everything Everywhere All at Once.
Oh, okay.
Have you seen that?
I have.
It's the whole story of she's sitting in the same chair with the same people in front of the same person. And this whole adventure unfolds and she ends up in the same chair at the same moment in front of the same person, but with a wholly expanded consciousness.
Yeah.
And that feels to me like a really cool
That's a great example.
And I mean, I think there's a million examples. And I think the use of examples is really important in this because for me to conceptualize it, I need those examples. So the more the better.
Okay.
This is completely like just a visual thing.
Yeah.
I would suggest putting a warm color in your slides as well as the cool colors that you have now.
Oh, okay.
Pick one, orange, red, whatever, but just bring a little warm color into it because it is, like this slide is beautiful and it attracts attention.
Yeah.
Some of them they're just kind of subdued.
Okay.
And so I think a warm color complement would be great.
Okay.
Examples. I also think giving some examples of stories that weren't written in that structure
Okay.
as a comparison, as a contrast,
Okay.
would be useful just to have it in your head.
Okay.
Because I started thinking about lots of different stories I like and well, is that or is it not? And why do I like that? And why is this? And I also thought Japanese and Asian filmmakers, I think they use recall.
Yeah.
Like a particular color or even a scrap of fabric can be shown over and over again in their films.
Yeah.
And it calls you back to that understanding of where the story is and where it's going.
Yeah.
And I think they have a more artistic approach to storytelling.
For sure.
And that is kind of what ring theory is. It's about touching your mind in a certain way, one of your senses, whatever those senses might be,
Yeah.
and drawing you back into the story with that rather than anything intellectual. But yeah,
I think Parasite might be a really great example of that.
Parasite's a really good one
Because
as well.
he has that rock that they keep bringing back.
Yeah, yeah.
But
And I think an example for each of the methods that you talk about. You know, you're talking about here's how you use ring theory. It doesn't have to be that, you don't have to panic and be like,
Yeah.
I have to write this in ring theory. You have to pick some things that are going to stick in people's long-term memories and bring them back around to the structure of the story.
Okay.
And I think some examples around, okay, what's a movie or a book or a story where they use location, you did mention one, where they use particular lines of dialogue, where they use particular emotions.
So do you think maybe like instead of having this one slide,
I think
maybe
expand it.
breaking it into like
Break it down into methods of how they've employed ring theory in their stories.
okay.
Is it the plot only?
Yeah.
Or are there other aspects to it? Is it a
Okay.
visual thing? Is it a something you hear? Is it the story itself?
Yeah.
But yeah, I think that it would help to get a deeper view
Yeah.
of it if you could see the different ways that people do it.
And I think because I think I was done around minute 33.
Yeah.
And so I think I could take at least 3 examples of, like the night manager is really good because it is like, this is just how you can do it using locations.
Yeah.
And then maybe taking Parasite, and maybe the Mitchells versus the Machines, because their callbacks are not.
And also the Mitchells are, how popular is that? How many
Yeah,
people
I
have seen
actually,
it?
I do worry about using that as an
Because
example.
I've never even heard of it.
Yeah.
Maybe there's a more popular or widely seen, I would say,
Yeah.
example that you could use.
Yeah. So yeah, adding,
I mean, the cruise,
sort of
for
expanding
example.
out on the example. But do you think that you have like a good understanding of what ring composition is? Like you're not confused about the basic ideas of it?
I'm not confused about basic ideas of it.
Okay.
Could
You
you
just
ask,
want more
if
examples?
I was going to write something,
Yeah.
I'd probably write it and then analyze it from that perspective, rather than try to write it in that structure.
Yeah.
Like I wouldn't, because I will block myself as a perfectionist from actually getting anything on the page if I'm trying to think too hard about what it should look like.
Yeah.
Instead, I would just write it and I would say, okay, which aspects of this fit in with this idea and what could I add or shift or tweak
Yeah.
that would bring it into that.
I do think that there are 2 ways to use ring composition. Is something that gets talked about a lot in the writing community is, are you a pantser or are you a plotter? Plotters are people who outline everything and then
Right.
go write. Pantsers are people who just start writing and they see where the story goes. So I think that if you are a plotter, ring composition can help you because it gives you guidance at every stage.
Yeah.
Like you pick out your beginning, your middle, and end, and then you build to the middle.
Yeah.
If you are a pantser, it's one of those things where you would write your first draft without thinking about ring composition. And then as you're reading it through, find the elements that are popping off the page and being more intentional with how you bring them back in your second draft and in your third draft.
And maybe that's something you could add.
Yeah.
Because everyone in your audience is going to be one of those too.
Yeah, exactly.
You know, and it's kind of like, for those of us who can't really start off with a plan, it's just not an ADHD thing.
Yeah.
You know, it's good to know that you can still, you can still bring elements of this theory in and you can still use this structure.
Yeah. Even if you're not
starting from the beginning thinking about how do I make this structure work, you just write your story and then you look at how it fits. Because,
I think the hard thing about this lecture is it has to be done in 50 minutes. That's just sort of the industry format. And this is the intro to it. This is like, based off of this, I could create an intensive workshop. I could create an entire term-long course off of it. But it does have to this just being the introduction. Examples
in order for people to really visualize and understand the sort of dynamics of what you're describing.
Yeah.
And I was wondering also, because you're talking about How to Train Your Dragon, which is Ash's very favorite.
Oh yeah.
Would you kind of know a ring theory show from a non-ring theory show by the fact that each one could stand alone? You don't need, there's no cliffhanger, you don't need another, each one is its own thing.
Yeah.
And some TV shows do that as well. I mean, Black Mirror, for example.
Yeah.
But, I would think about How to Train Your Dragon as one where I could watch just one, whereas Marvel is always what's going to happen next, what's going to happen next. So, yeah. You missed it, but it was awesome.